Today's topic is how to manipulate your DNA for better health.
Welcome to the Restorative Longevity Podcast, where we share how to increase your quality of life while also increasing your longevity. Now let's welcome our host, Jimmy Yen, also known as the AcuSensei. Jimmy is a licensed acupuncturist, herbalist, nutritionist, and restorative longevity expert dedicated to guiding you on your journey to vibrant health and lasting wellness.
Yes, how to manipulate your DNA for better health. With all the talk about DNA and DNA testing and all this new research that's going on, how does DNA affect your health and how can you use it? Is it true that when your DNA is obviously from what you're inherited, right? Can you change that? Just because you have a family history of cancer, does that mean you are doomed for cancer? The short answer is no, you're not. You can actually manipulate your DNA so that whatever your family history, you have a family history of high hypertension, high blood pressure, high cholesterol, cancer, thyroid disease, autoimmune disease, whatever the disease that is so common these days, especially here in the US, just because your family members and your family history, 2, 3, 4 generations have it, you don't have to have any of them if you manipulate your DNA. And so that's what we're going to talk about today. And what's the point, right? First of all, that is the point of today's podcast. But at the same time, it is, how do you do that? I'm going to get you straight to the point of how do you do that? It's your food. You're probably, maybe some of you were expecting something like completely out of oh, this new technology is going to help me, slice up my DNA so I don't have to do anything, Actually, maybe that will come in the future. But for now, you have 100% control of your DNA. You have 100% control of your DNA. And it is through food is how you can manipulate your DNA so that you will never get any of those health issues, health conditions that your family, you have a family history of. Okay? So let's dive in deep. So how do you manipulate your DNA? That is the question, right? So here's the thing. Why is food probably the most effective tool, right? Because think about it. How many of us exercise every single day? If you're here in the US, how many of us exercise just in your city, maybe even in your household? How many of you exercise every single day? In my family, in my household, right? Actually, if I just include me, my wife, my in-laws, actually three out of 4. My wife is the only one that does not exercise every single day. Okay, but most households, right? Maybe if you have a household of 4, maybe only one person exercises every single day. It is very rare that every person in the household exercises every single day. Okay, so then how can that be an effective tool to manipulate your DNA? Can exercise manipulate your DNA? Absolutely. But what is one thing that is the most effective for everybody, right? Next question, does everybody take medications every single day? No. In my family of 4, only one, my father-in-law, takes medications every single day. The rest of us, we don't take any medications, right? How many of us another question, how many of us are exposed to environmental toxins every single day? Like back in the day in the coal miners, they were exposed, they worked every day, 5 days a week, at least 5 days a week, they were exposed to toxins, heavy metals, dust, dirt, whatever, right? Chemicals. So that's not, exposure, environment. Most of us here in the US, we live in a comfortable environment. We live in a house. It's central AC, central heating. So everything is controlled, right? So what is the one thing that every one of us in the US does every day? I would say not everyone, but because there are homeless people that don't eat every day. But most of us, we eat every day. And that is the reason why food is the most important tool to manipulate your DNA in order for better health. right? And that is also a reason why maybe some of you, who are watching, maybe you've, read the books. You've read all these books and it tells you, oh, you got to change your shower, your water system, right? You have to change, don't use plastic, cups. Don't use plastic containers. Don't use aluminum frying pans, right? Don't don't use perfumes. Don't use all of those, right? And maybe some of you have done all of those changes in your life. You've made those changes because you want to be healthy. And some of you, maybe 50% of you saw an improvement in your health when you reduce those, right? Especially if you have allergies, right? If you have allergies, you got to reduce a lot of those artificial scents in the smells, right? In your household, and that goes to the chemical cleaners that you use, right? Those affect your allergies immediately. So maybe you remove those and it improves your health, but then it stalled. Your health didn't get any better. Or you're in the boat where you made all those changes. You're like, I bought this filter, I bought this type of clothing, I bought this, type of shoe. I bought everything, but I still see very minimal or no improvement in my health, right? Well, that's what I just said is the reason, because those things are not things that you do every single day. What is the one thing you do every single day? It's eat. You put in your mouth. That is something you do every single day, and that is the main tool that can help you manipulate your DNA, right? And so if you are in a situation where you have chronic health conditions, and that's what this podcast is about. It's for chronic health conditions. Can it help people with acute problems? Yeah, it could, but that's not the information that I dispense is not geared toward them, because those people want biohacking. They want short, instant, quick fix, this is not what this podcast is about. This is about long-term, sustainable results, right? And so if you were to ask me, what's the one thing I can change? Is like, hey, Jimmy, what's the one thing I can change in my life that will have the biggest bang, the biggest impact on my health and improve my health? What's the one thing? It's change your food, change your diet. Why do you think the diet industry is like $1 billion? I don't even know how many billions it is right now. Why is it $1 billion industry? Because it is the most important thing, diet. Many people exercise to overcome diet so they can eat whatever they want. That ain't sustainable. You can exercise all you want. It ain't gonna change. It ain't gonna overcome all the bad eating habits that you're doing, right? So if there's one thing that you can change in your life today, and it's a habit that I recommend you change for the rest of your life, and it will dramatically improve your health, dramatically, is your diet. Now, when I say diet, I'm not talking about supplements. Supplements is not part of diet. Supplements is supplements. When I talk about diet, I'm talking about food and water, like drinking filtered water, right? Okay. Now, research is also finding out the same thing. What I just said, research is saying the same thing, because research shows that dietary nutrients have the ability to influence and regulate our DNA's behavior. Now, it doesn't change your DNA. Let me make sure that's clear. Nothing you do can change your DNA. That's what you were born with, okay? But what you can do is you can manipulate it. You can manipulate what? You can manipulate your DNA's behavior. What does that mean? You can turn some DNA on and turn some DNA off. That's what I mean by manipulating, right? And research has shown nutrients like omega-3s, choline, antioxidants, B vitamins. And I've talked about these already. If you want to go a deep dive into these omega-3, choline, antioxidants, B vitamins, I did specific podcasts on this. Subscribe to our channel and go to our podcast, and I've talked about all of these omega-3s. I did a whole podcast on just omega-3s, choline, antioxidants, B vitamins, right? So you can go back to that. I won't go into detail today. Now, the study, research is all over this. Researchers, scientists are finding out how food can manipulate your DNA. They actually even created a new profession or a new category of study. It's called Nutrigenomics. So if you haven't heard the word Nutrigenomics, it came from, it's the study of the interaction of food and your genes. Remember, epigenetics is how your environment affects your genes. Nutrigenomics is how your food affects your genes, right? How it directly affects your DNA activity. And this is something that I've learned before. You know, I'm a Chinese medicine practitioner. I'm a Chinese medicine, and so Chinese medicine has been around for 3,000 years. Here in the U.S., all around the world, everybody, you know, many people accept Chinese medicine because it's been proven. It's been around for 3,000 years, and it's still here, and it still works. It's in all the hospitals in Asia, just not here in the U.S. Here in the U.S., the medical industry is saying, oh, Chinese medicine it's voodoo. It is witchcraft. It is not proven, scientifically proven, right? They have to here in the US, what we're brainwashed to think is that it has to be done in a laboratory here in the US. If it's done in a laboratory in Europe, that doesn't count. If it's done in a laboratory in Asia, it doesn't count. If it's done in a laboratory in Russia, it doesn't count. The only thing that counts here in the US, according to the medical industry, is when the research is done here in the laboratory here in the US. And so if it's not done here, then it's not truth. It's a bunch of myths, right? That's just what it is. I'm not trying to say, you know, what's right or wrong, but that's what it is here in the US. But coming back to now they're saying, so in Chinese medicine, they always had the saying, you are what you eat. We are what we eat. And so now this new so-called research, new classification, I don't even know what you call this, a new profession of nutrigenomics, which has been around for 3,000 years, okay? But now because someone here in the US finally did some research and admits it, now it's official. We are what we eat, okay? So now more and more research are showing that what we eat changes the expression of our DNA. So our diet is no longer just a fuel, a source for our sustenance, but it also can switch on our genetics on and off, right? And what does that mean? So food can actually turn on your good genes. We have good genes and bad genes. Yes, we have good genes and bad genes. You do inherit the bad genes of cancer, of Hashimoto's, of autoimmune disease. You do inherit that from your parents, but it doesn't mean you have to turn that gene on, right? You are the person that turns it on. Now, this is a confronting podcast as well. Nobody is forcing you to turn it on. You are turning it on, right? But here's that's the problem. What's the solution? The solution is your food. You can eat certain foods to turn on good genes. You can eat certain foods to turn off bad genes. That's the beauty of it. You can absolutely manipulate your DNA if you choose to, right? There is no more, I don't know, I can't, I was born with this, there's nothing I can do. No, there's no more of that. Research finally here in the US, research has been done all around the world to prove this already. We're here in the US, we're just like 50 years behind. But research finally here in the US is showing that food can turn on good genes, and it could turn off good genes too. So if you turn off your good genes, guess what? It's going to make you sick. It's going to turn off your good genes, turn on your bad genes. So now cancer genes are turned on, you're going to get cancer. You have Parkinson's disease, you're going to get Parkinson's. It's because of the things you do. Okay. So good news is you absolutely can control your health. You have full control of your health. There is no more this, I had these bad genes, there's nothing I can do. No, there's none of that. I'm getting old. No, doesn't matter. The blue zones have many people 100 years old that are healthier than the 40-year-olds here in the US. Okay? The bad news is it's under your control. The bad news is it's confronting, right? The bad news is your bad health is self-induced. That's the bad news. Good news is you can change it, and you can start today. Okay, so food is not just for fuel; it's for information. It gives us information. How does food actually manipulate our DNA, right? And so, if you think about this, our cells actually have receptors, and it's looking for these. So our cells, our DNA is looking for these specific nutrients. And when it gets the nutrients, then it turns on good genes or it turns off good genes, right? So for example, omega-3s. In a previous podcast, I especially for brain health, if you have Parkinson's, you have dementia, you have Alzheimer's, you need to be you need to be, eating omega-3s like crazy, okay? Your cells have these sensors. They can spot omega-3. So you eat omega-3, it goes into your bloodstream. Your cells have these sensors. So I'm getting a fresh supply of omega-3s through the meal. So now it will let your DNA, these receptors, send a message to your DNA. Your DNA say, hey, help is on the way. And your DNA will shut off. It'll be like relaxing. It'll be like, oh, okay, good. I don't have to work so hard anymore, right? I can relax. I don't need to produce more anti-inflammatory compounds, because when your body senses, your DNA senses that you have too much inflammation in your body, it turns on, right, the DNA that says, hey, I need to produce more anti-inflammatory compounds, right? But when your body's getting it, then your DNA can relax. It won't be, overworked. Now, depending on which nutrient you ingest, your body will identify it. Is it a friend or is it foe? So is it good for your body or is it bad for your body? And depending on how your body identifies it, if your body identifies it as a good nutrient, then it will continue to activate and those good DNAs, and it will suppress. The good nutrients will actually suppress the bad DNA, your cancer DNA, your Parkinson DNA, your dementia DNA, your Alzheimer's DNA. But if it identifies it as a bad nutrient, okay, it's going to go haywire. That bad nutrient is going to suppress your good DNA, right? So there's also this thing, when we're talking about DNA, called bio-individuality or biological individuality. Biological individuality. What's this mean? This means no two people are the same. Doesn't matter if you're identical twins. No two people are the same, right? And so that means if no two people are the same, then could it mean that certain people will need certain nutrients more than other people? Absolutely, right? So we're going to dive in deep into this right now. So what is biological individuality, or short is bio-individuality? No two people have the same DNA, exact same DNA, okay? No people are the exact same. So what does that mean? That means there is no one diet that is great for everybody for the rest of their life. There's no one diet that everybody can follow, okay, to the T, and they will be healthy forever, right? And that's what it means. So now you're like, oh man, what am I to do then? Oh, there's so many different diets, right? Well, let me add something else to this. You'll notice, for those of you who have been following this podcast, I did do a podcast about the perfect diet. There is one diet, right? It is not 100% perfect for everybody, no, but it is a foundation. There is one perfect foundational diet. There is one perfect foundational diet where your body's DNA will identify those nutrients from that specific diet. Okay, from that specific diet, it will activate many of your good genes and suppress your bad genes. Now, will you need to modify that diet? Absolutely, depending on your gene expression, right? So, what is that perfect diet? Again, I did that podcast, right? It is a Mediterranean diet. The Mediterranean diet is the perfect baseline diet. You have to modify it based on, how your body is different. And it's not just genetics. We're going to talk about microbiome as well, right? So going back, bio-individuality means each human has a unique biochemistry that influences behavior, mental health, hormonal production, allergic tendencies, immune capacity, and nutritional needs. And that's based on your DNA, okay? Because the genetic differences in our DNA processes food differently. It absorbs nutrients differently from one person to the other, right? And so this is like another proverb. So the old adage that I said, maybe a proverb too, you are what you eat. Here's another one. One man's meat is another man's poison, right? So here's an example. This is something that I also learned. It was new to me and I recently found out. Lactose intolerant people. So I am lactose intolerant. I always believed in the myth that the reason why I'm lactose intolerant is because that's in the Asian DNA, right? And that may be true. I don't know if that's not true, but here's recent research, and that makes sense to me. So I believe it, right? It makes sense to me because that's what I've seen as well. If I look back at different cultures. So the reason why I'm lactose intolerant really may not be because my DNA does not have the ability to produce lactase, which is the enzyme. Lactose intolerant means I don't have the enzyme lactase, which is an enzyme to break down lactose. Lactose intolerant means my body does not have the ability to break down lactose, which is a sugar in milk. So every time I drink milk, cow's milk, animal milk, I'll have gastrointestinal problems, mostly like diarrhea, bloating and all that stuff, is because I lack. Now, why do I have that? Why can I not break down lactose? It's because I lack the enzyme lactase. I thought originally, I believed in the myth here in the, based on the research here in the US that, it's because genetically I do not produce lactase, right? And that may be completely false. Because here's what they found out. Here's what scientists found out. Humans, when we're born, we drink mother's milk. At that time, we were producing lactase, right? When we were drinking our mother's milk, my body was producing lactase. Here's where the problem. So every baby has the ability to produce lactase. Every baby, as far as I know, right? Maybe wrong, but as far as I know, based on this research, it's saying that every baby has the ability to produce lactase. So every baby has the ability to break down lactose. So nobody was born lactose intolerant, right? So how did I become lactose intolerant? It's in the weaning process. So as my mom weaned me off of breast milk, then she started feeding me food, which was non-dairy food, right? Non-dairy food. And I'll tell you a couple of reasons why this is in the Asian culture. And so at the same time, humans, thousands of years ago, they started herding cattle. And so they began, being able to digest cow's milk as adults became an evolutionary advantage. So this is a cultural thing. So they found, like in Asian cultures, Thailand, African cultures, they don't drink cow's milk after they are weaned off of the human milk. But here in the US, many babies are drinking cow milk even in replace of human milk, right? So cow's milk has been ingrained into the American culture. You're drinking cow's milk every day. As a kid, before you went to bed, you were given dairy. You were given dairy, right? Cow's milk. So here in the American culture, you were drinking cow's milk regardless, like during a baby, after weaning off your mom's milk, you're still drinking milk. You're just drinking another mom's milk. You're drinking cow's milk, and then as an adult, you keep on drinking cow's milk. So what does that do? That stimulates the body, the DNA, to produce lactase. But in Asian culture, that's not common for many reasons. One, especially like in China, because poor. The Asian cultures, and especially also the way I grew up, we were poor. We grew up poor. My parents grew up poor. I grew up poor. Cow's milk, it was a little more expensive. So we did not. So after we were weaned off of human milk, we went to like rice. So because that, our bodies lost the ability to produce lactase. And because we were training our body there's no more need to do lactase, right? So I thought that was pretty interesting, right? It makes sense because if I look at the culture, I look at history of my family's history and so forth, right? So today, you'll notice some Americans are also lactose intolerant, and those, I'm curious if you know someone who's lactose intolerant here in the U.S. Ask them, were they weaned off after they were weaned off of human milk? Did they also not drink dairy, right? Because I bet you this is what research is showing. Those who stopped, were weaned off of cow's milk, weaned off of human milk, and never got into cow's milk, they're probably lactose intolerant as well. Okay, but another side note, another reason why in Asian cultures we don't drink animal milk when we're babies, because it's mucus producing and it's inflammation producing. So, and it's also allergy producing. That's another reason, right? So even now with the Asian cultures, they're more wealthy, they can afford cow's milk now. Many choose not to do it because it is an inflammatory food. So again, remember, there are there are food are information for our DNA. They can actually activate your DNA, your good DNA, or suppress your good DNA. They can activate your bad DNA, or they can suppress your bad DNA. Dairy activates your bad DNA. It causes inflammation. It causes mucus producing DNA, right? However, again, that's based off 1,000 years out. So this is research based out, information based outside of US. If you're looking at research in the US, this is what they tell you. They tell you that milk is such a good nutrient. It's a good source of fat, protein, calcium, vitamin D, and B vitamins like choline, which is super important for your brain, which is true. It does contain those things, but what the research here in the US doesn't tell you is all the harmful effects that cow's milk does to your body. Okay? Now, we are also unique in the way that we process information, process food, right? We are genetically unique in how we process our food. All right. So some food are naturally, assimilating nutrients. We will get like vitamin E, B, omegas. Some people naturally, genetically cannot absorb those nutrients effectively, right? Now, others have difficulty controlling trace minerals like copper, zinc, iron, right? And so that's you're probably thinking, some of y'all may think, oh man, what do I do then? What do I do, right? It's like, oh man, how do I know, right? All these things. More and more tests are getting done. Like there's genetic tests, there's micronutrient testing that's getting done, right? There's a lot of genetic testing, Nutrigenomics testing that can maybe provide some insight. Now I'm going to add a little more. I'm going to throw a wrench into it. So besides genes genetically being different, we are also different in what's called microbiome. Our bacteria, the bacteria in our body, is also different, and that throws a wrench in it as well, right? So you're thinking, okay, should I do those Nutrigenomics DNA testing? In my opinion, you can if you have the resources. Is it absolutely necessary? I don't believe so. I've never done it because there are basic principles that you can do. There are basic foundational restorative longevity principles that you can do without doing those Nutrigenomics genetics testing. And because they're freaking expensive, they're $500-$600 minimum, and the price is just going up. $500 to $600 just to do that genetic testing. Some of them are $1,000. If you go to a medical doctor, you go to a functional medicine practitioner, they're thousands of dollars. And that just gives you the information, doesn't tell you what to do. And so why do I say that it's not necessary? I don't do it. I don't recommend my family members do it. I don't recommend my patients do it. I don't think it's necessary because of this fact. The blue zones. People in the blue zones who live over 100 years old, they have a better quality of life. Okay, they're living over 100 years old, longer longevity, okay, which means less disease. They're mentally alert, no Alzheimer's, Parkinson's and all that stuff. None of them did any genetic testing. They did foundational, restorative, longevity, nutrition, diet, lifestyle habits. That's what they did. And it's working, right? Right? We still have the Nutrigenomics, we are still young in that. I haven't seen any research that shows someone who just did Nutrigenomics, genetic testing, followed it exactly, lived their life based on that, and they're living over 100 years old, and they are, disease-free, and they are living a high quality of life. They're still farming, they're still dancing. I haven't heard any research that shows that. Not saying it won't happen, but I just haven't seen any research, right? So I don't recommend that. But that is it for today. And the purpose of today's how to manipulate your DNA is through better. Now you may be thinking, okay, so what exactly do I do? Go back to my previous podcast. I shared with you what's the food you need to eat for the specific nutrients. So the Mediterranean diet is your foundational diet. Start there, right? Start there. You need to get to that foundation. If you can't even do the foundation, don't worry about all these other supplements and all these other, biohacking, right? They're not sustainable. If you want sustainable, restorative longevity life, then you need to get a foundation first. Build your foundation, and then I did a podcast on that. So build your foundation, and then go through my podcast. I talk about all these nutrients that will benefit. How do you get it from food source? Not from a supplement, not from a pill. How do you eat it, right? How do you eat it? Focus on that. I even did one on exercise, right? I did one on how HIIT training is killing you. You need to do LIT training. So those are the things. Go back to my podcast, take a lot of notes, get your friends and family to join with you, because it's easier to have a community doing the same thing. And that's what the blue zones are about. They are communities doing very similar things. They eat similar things. They don't eat exactly the same thing, but they eat similar foundational diets. 5 different blue zones all across the world, different countries eating the same foundational diet. If that ain't proof enough that it works, I don't know what proof. Why would you want to follow something that's done in a laboratory? And I love research. I'm a biochemist. I love research, but I ain't gonna follow something just because it's done in a lab, right? I'm gonna follow real life laboratory, real life examples, real life case studies. 5 different blue zones in different parts of the country, different nationalities, culture, everything, but they eat the same foundational diet. It must work. All right, guys, thank you for tuning in. I'll see you same time next week, Sunday, 8 a.m. Central Standard Time. And I'll see you there. Peace.
This episode is sponsored by Achieve Integrative Health, the #1 acupuncture clinic in the US. We're grateful for their support in helping us bring you the Restorative Longevity Podcast.